This week, we look at the different types of social engineering test because, in order to really understand policies and procedures, we want to be able to test the policies and procedures. So, I want to talk about three types of social engineering, uh, things that you would do to create a test, and then what do we do when we report upon them. So, the first thing is the three types I'm going to talk about are phishing, vishing, and on site. And I don't care if it's spear phishing or just general phishing, uh, the test will be the same regardless in this particular instance. So let's start with phishing. Okay, so the key thing with a phishing attack is you've got to have a plan. So you have to make it something believable. Whether you send an email that has a link, it could have a phone number, it could have a website, but it needs to be very realistic. In our digital day and age where we have VoIP, clicking on a phone number is just one way that you can get somebody to click on something, and that would be a type of phishing attack. And it has to have a hook of something of interest. What is it that's going to make that person click on it? Whether it's pictures, whether look at your paycheck to see if this is correct, look at something, validate some piece of information that you might have, whatever it might be. It needs to be something that is enticing enough, looks realistic, that the uh, target will click on the link. And know what the controls are. Know what kind of virus protection is running in the environment that you're conducting this test. Know if there's any spam filters that spam out certain type of words. Understanding what it is that the environment has is critical to being successful. And then the last thing is actually testing the mechanics of your phishing email. For example, when you click on it, does it do something? Does it actually record that the person clicked on it? Is it able to be integrated very easily in the email? So, testing out the mechanics of what you created is another important component of it. The second type of social engineering test I want to talk about is the vishing or the telephone social engineering. These have become in greater prevalence for multiple reasons. A, we carry around our cell phones with us all the time. And some of these attacks now can be done not just through telephone, but through texting, where you get a text and it tells you to click on a link. And that is equally as dangerous as just clicking on a link in an email. Sometimes we don't realize that. I was in an event and one of the speakers talked about how, in a group of very security uh, conscious people who all had clearances, he said, I've just sent out this report to all of the attendees. You should be getting a text from me. If you click on the link, you will get the report. Uh, People just went and clicked on this link. They didn't look at anything with the link, but they clicked on it, and they didn't know the speaker from anything before. Now, granted, this was just a test to show people how gullible we are to do these things. But whether it's a text or a phone, you've got to create some type of a script. You've got to be able to really validate that you are an authentic person. Oftentimes, the vishing goes along with a text type of attack. So you might create a script and say, "Listen, I'm from Home Depot, and we have a special sale right now on bathroom supplies, and you have been selected because you live in this vicinity, and we're trying out this new vendor. You're going to get a text. If you click on this text just for answering these few questions I'm giving you, you can go to Home Depot, and it will give you a 20% off coupon." So you create some script. You always identify yourself and your purpose. It gives this particular attack greater validity. And beware of your tone, always sounding confident. Talk clearly and slow so people can understand you. The last thing you want to do is appear to be rushing, because that alludes to trying to cover something up. Be friendly, develop a rapport with the person on the phone, and think of the best time to call. So if you're calling at about 4:30, people are already thinking about going home. They don't want to be on the phone with somebody. If you're calling in the morning, um, make it a time that people might be, you know, not real busy, whatever that might be. But just think of times where people might be more available and less pressed in doing other things. And also be aware of the background sounds within your environment. For example, if you want to sound like you are calling from Home Depot, then maybe being in a place where, you know, there's the Home Depot's announcement or something would be useful. But generally, being in a professional place is the best. The next type of social engineering test, which is probably definitely the most invasive, but also very important, is the social engineering on-site test, where you actually try to get into the location, uh, and based upon what you have agreed on in your contract, you try to do these things. So, one of the things that is very common is for people to try to figure out how to get in. And once they get into the place, whether they say they're having a meeting with somebody, whether they say that they're a vendor and they're fixing something, but they have a routine. I've known of people who have the routine where they go to the restroom and they wait in the restroom till almost everybody goes home, and then the place is open, and then they prowl around to do their social engineering attack. So it all depends upon what your intent is. Look official. So whatever you say, if you're a vendor for IBM, then dress like a vendor from IBM. Wear some type of a blue shirt. If you are a if you are going to be like an air conditioning control repair person, then come in with a bag and look like you're somebody who's going to be working in some equipment. So look the part. Carry, if you're just an office worker, carry around um, an inner office envelope. That always works. And then identify what the goals of the on-site test is. And this is very clear. And this should be identified in your contract. Is it to gain access to secure places? Like, for example, you're trying to get into the computer room, or you trying to get into the CEO's office or the CFO's office? Um, the access, gaining access, looking for identifications. Is that something you're supposed to do? People leaving their badges laying around, people leaving passwords laying around. Is it being able to log on to computers that people supposedly logged off on? Is it to be able to take somebody's password and then try it at a computer? Is it to access the network? Is it to check the photocopiers to see what kind of information is left laying around? Whatever it might be, identify what the goals of the test are. Then you need to record this test, because you're doing it under cloak and dagger. So what you want to do is gather trophies, whether it would be pieces of paper from the copy machine that have something written on it. Maybe it would be somebody's business card that you went to their office. Maybe it's you leaving business cards at strategic places within the organization where you did it, whether it's the computer room after you got into the computer room, or whether it's the CEO's office, whatever it might be. But record what you've done and do it immediately, because you will forget all the things that you have done after the test. It's just this is like this adrenaline rush that occurs when you kind of like break in and you are doing these things. So record what you've done. And then test for human vulnerabilities. Now, this is really a tricky one. Some things, humans are very curious. We all are. So, for example, if one of the goals is to make sure people do not put flash drives into their computers without doing some scan, um, what you can do is you can distribute flash drives, whether you leave them on in the bathroom and somebody picks them up, or you leave them in a conference room, whether you leave them in a parking lot. But it's called Road Apple, and it's the physical bait that lures people to actually take the USB and plug it in. Shoulder surfing, looking over people's shoulder and seeing if they notice and if they make any effort to conceal their password or their ID as they're getting into buildings. Tailgating, this has got to be one of the most popular ones. When I worked for one of the agencies, one of the key things that they said is each person had to go in individually. It was to log who came into the building and who came out. And because it was that logging, nobody felt offended by not holding a door for somebody else. Uh, we are a very polite people, and we hold the door. But really, if you think about it, going into somebody's apartment, for example, where they have security, how good is the security for holding the door for the supposed pizza man, for example, or pizza woman? Um, Making friends with people at the coffee and smoking break area is also an effective way, to gain information and to get into places that you wouldn't have been able to get into. There was a story about a woman, and she was doing her social engineering attack. And what she did was she told the receptionist, she said, listen, it was in the UK, and she said, I'm from the American office. My flight is delayed. I'd like to work in the office today. Uh, and she gave the name of an actual American employee. So there was no picture associated with that employee. So another reason to make sure you have a picture directory of your employees, picture directory that you can actually identify the employees. She gave her this name. There was no picture. So the receptionist allowed the woman to come in. She didn't ask for a badge. The person was just sitting in the coffee room working. And then somebody came. She went to somebody and said her goal, by the way, was that she needed to get an IT ticket for some kind of IT report that had been made. And so what happened is she she went to the IT person. She was in the coffee room, and she asked where the IT help desk was. Somebody took her to the IT help desk, which was behind a locked door, put her in. One of the IT help desks then said, what do you want? And she said that she wanted this particular copy of this ticket because that was what she was supposed to get. And this IT help desk person was very skeptical, actually, and went back to the receptionist and said, why is this person here? And the receptionist says, well, she's from the American office, and had a name. And the receptionist pretty much told the IT help desk to make a copy of the ticket. So once that was done and the report was done, it showed that even though the IT help desk was very skeptical, he wasn't persuasive enough. So that coffee smoking break area is a big thing. And building a rapport is very important. So in the US, we call it, we refer to it as Ford um, family. What are those acronyms? They stand for something. Family. Um, okay, well, they stand for something that I should have written down. But in UK, it's family, athletics, nothing, and weather. So I know what the UK is. I can't remember what it is in the US. Alas. So, these are the ways that we can build rapport. Make sure everything you do is approved, approved, approved. So when you're creating that contract for your scope, for the scope of the engagement for this social engineering attack, the person has got to be able to contract for such a thing. There has to be a clear identification of what should be in this scope. There has to be clear evidence. You have to clearly spell out what type of evidence the social engineer, need to provide in order to prove that you broke in. And lastly, you need to know who is aware of this so you don't blow your cover. So making sure everything is written down in the contract is critical. You do not do anything that is not written down in the contract. There is too much liability for you. And then lastly, you want to write up the report. So there are couple different parts to this report, the executive summary. And the executive summary is just really a quick, hey, this is the findings, this is what we did, and this is how long it took. And uh, these are the top 3 recommendations that you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck on. The technical details are going to go into all of those items, the methodology, timelines, findings, and recommendations in far more detail. And you're going to provide all the data that you found, whatever the artifacts that you picked up along the way. There's really controversy as to whether you should give the names of people who you found were not, like, kept their passwords on their desk, for example, or left their badge out. Um, Some people feel you should. Other people feel that by doing that, it will make uh, the workforce, the people that are being socially engineered, to be able to use this as a training. Um, we don't want to make them feel foolish. We want to educate them so they don't do it again. So maybe the first time you keep it anonymous, but the second time you publish it, because this is actually a learning opportunity for your staff. And based upon the social engineering report, that can be the basis for the policies and procedures, and the policies and procedures should be the basis for the social engineering uh, attack that you do, the social engineering um, thing you create. So I'm hoping that this was helpful for you. I will look forward to continuing this conversation. Thanks, and I'll talk with you later.